Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the Acts of the Apostles. We're in Acts chapter 18, and we read about Paul's visit and missionary work in the Greek city of Corinth. Now, after Paul left Athens and established the church there, he next goes to Corinth, which is the greatest city economically and commercially and politically in the Greek province of Achaia, which is southern Greece. Corinth was a great city, very prosperous place, large metropolitan area. It is the provincial capital, the seat of Roman government in this province of Greece. And so Paul naturally wants to establish a church there. Let's begin reading at the first of chapter 18. Paul had left Athens and he goes to Corinth. There he met a Jew named Aquila, a native of Pontus, who had recently come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because Claudius had ordered all the Jews to leave Rome. Paul went to see them, and because he was a tent maker as they were, he started working with them. And every Sabbath he reasoned in the synagogue, trying to persuade Jews and Greeks. Now when Paul comes to Corinth, remember he's by himself, he's still waiting for Silas and Timothy to rejoin him from Macedonia. But he meets up with this couple, a man and his wife, Aquila and Priscilla, who have recently moved to Corinth from the city of Rome. They are tent makers, as is Paul. That's his occupation. And so they go into business together. Now what's interesting is that we are told Aquila and Priscilla had recently migrated from Rome because the Roman Emperor Claudius had ordered all the Jews to be expelled from the city. There had been some kind of dispute in the Jewish community of Rome, and Claudius simply responded by ordering all the Jews to leave the city. What was that dispute about? We know from the Roman historian Suetonius, he talks about this. And he says there was a dispute in Rome among the Jews over somebody named Christus. And the dispute was so great that Claudius ordered them to leave the city. Now we think that this Christus was probably a reference to Christ. Suetonius really didn't know what it was about, so he thought it was about some person by the name of Christus. But it was probably about Christos, that is the Christ. And so it seems that the gospel had come to Rome. Many of the Jews had believed, many had not. A dispute arose about this movement. Claudius really didn't understand it. Suetonius didn't understand it. He just knew there was a dispute, so he ordered the Jews to leave, which included those who believed. It seems that Aquila and Priscilla were two of those Jewish believers in Jesus. We think they were already Christians by the time Paul met them. That's why he associated with them. Be that as it may, they're in Corinth now. They become friends with Paul. They become friends for the rest of Paul's ministry and life. And they work together, and also they begin to spread the gospel. As always, Paul starts in the synagogue, proclaiming that Jesus is the Messiah to both Jews and God-fearing Greeks or Gentiles. As we read on, it says, Silas and Timothy rejoin Paul. They come from Macedonia. So Paul devotes himself exclusively to preaching, to testifying that Jesus is the Messiah. But eventually, verse 6 tells us, opposition to Paul arose in the synagogue, and he was forced to leave. And he said, your blood be on your own heads. I'm innocent of it. From now on, I will go to the Gentiles. This is the same pattern we see everywhere Paul goes. He starts in the synagogue. Some believe, some do not. Eventually, he's forced to leave the synagogue and move the church outside the Jewish synagogue. That's what happened in Corinth. It says, so Paul leaves the synagogue. He goes next door to the house of Titius Justus, a worshiper of God. Now, Titius Justus was one of those God-fearing Gentiles who was attached to the synagogue. He has become a believer in Jesus. And so he offers his house as a place for the church to meet. Much you remember as Lydia had done in Philippi earlier. So the church moves there. We're also told that Crispus, who was the synagogue leader, he and his entire household believe in the Lord. So many Corinthians who heard Paul believed, and they were baptized. A great church is being established in the city of Corinth. And then Paul has a vision. One night, the Lord spoke to Paul in a vision and said, do not be afraid. Keep on speaking. Do not be silent. For I am with you, and no one is going to attack or harm you, for I have many people in the city. We know that Paul did from time to time have visions, and this is one of those times the Lord appeared to him and said, don't be afraid. I'll keep you safe. You're going to have a great ministry in this city. So as a result of the vision, Paul stayed in Corinth for a year and a half, teaching them the Word of God. This is the longest Paul has stayed in any one city, but he spends a year and a half in the city of Corinth, establishing a great church. This church includes both Jews and Gentiles. It is a great Christian center. And from Corinth, Paul hopes to evangelize all of southern Greece. So he spends 18 months here establishing the gospel. We know that later in his ministry, Paul will write 2 letters to this church that we know of as 1st and 2nd Corinthians, but that will come a few years down the road. But right now, Paul spends a long time in the city of Corinth establishing a great church. Truly a remarkable day as the church is established in the provincial capital of Greece, of Achaia. In our next session, we'll see how Paul is hauled before the Roman governor in Corinth and what comes of that. But we'll look at that in our next session. Hope you have a great day today, and I'll see you next time for our 5-minute Bible study in the Acts of the Apostles.